Welcome to G's Backstage Pass. Today, my guest is JuLee Brand. Welcome.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
So, JuLee, you're a publisher, you're a graphic designer, and you're a storyteller, and you're so much more. Who is JuLee?
JuLee is so much more. But I think the overall, when you say storyteller, I think that is really, when it comes down to the core, that is what I am, whether it's telling stories and communicating through graphic design or it's
hmm
communicating through books. That really who I am. And I want to connect as many people as possible. So I think the storytelling element really is, at my core and is who I am.
So, tell us about your company, your publishing company, W Brand, and also I'd love to know what the different types and what your thoughts are on different types of publishing.
Yeah, so we started out as a traditional and hybrid publishing company, and the
hmm
difference there, traditional, is where the company provides all the services for publishing at no cost to the author, whereas hybrid publishing is a paid service, but it's more of a partnership between the author and publisher. So
hmm
there's a lot of shared responsibilities, and I think it really does put a little fire under everyone to really want to achieve things. And the reason that I went the hybrid route with our publishing company is because I do think that in order for an author to really connect to their audience, that there has to be a shared passion between the publisher and the author. And
hmm
so I vet all my books. We only take in certain types of books. We do fiction, nonfiction,
hmm
YA fiction, but I do make sure that they're along the lines of our mission. And our mission is basically to connect people and to tell stories of survival and diversity.
So, what are some things that you look for when you're deciding what authors you're going to, work with? Like we talked about before off camera about the X factor, or there's something that stands out. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I think that it's really an interesting. My first conversation with the potential author is really great, and I think that X factor is that connection of it's just vibing together. It's like I have a
Yeah.
passion for the story, and the author has something that they really want to share with the public, whether that is their personal story or even if it's just a fiction story that feels like it connects with a lot of people that are out there. But it's really, connecting with the authors and having that shared interest of and shared love for the connection to people.
Right. It's really a collaboration, isn't it? I mean, what you're bringing, what you bring to the collaboration, and the authors bring in what they, and it's just it has to have that connection and that
Absolutely.
synergy.
Absolutely, and I think that is. I have worked on the other side of
hmm
publishing. I've worked in the traditional for one of the big five, and
hmm
and I saw, they have a lot of cogs. They have a lot of wheels that turn to make that go, and it's a wonderful way to publish. But I see that I can bring a different side of that, and the side that I bring to the publishing industry is really on a a personal
hmm
level,
hmm
that it is really, and I know I have overused that word already, the connection to people. It really is,
Yes.
after all that we've been, just as human beings, just being able to connect to stories. I mean, that was really the original way to tell stories, was
hmm
orally,
hmm
and orally. So it's basically, it's just kind of a continuation on, and I think it's something that we have never given up on, is
hmm
the telling of those stories to make us feel like we're not alone in the universe, and that there is someone out there that's like us. And I think that's really one of the big things that I look for in our stories, is that, if somebody had a struggle in their life, or
hmm
they went through something, and it doesn't even have to be that, it's not full of drama. It's just that, hey, you know what, I went through this and I felt really alone when I went through that. And then to be able to, if somebody else reads that and goes, hey, I went through that same thing, and they reach out. When I have authors that tell me about people that have read the book and reached out to them and touched their lives, that's just
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
that is like, that's an affirmation that, oh yes, this is what I'm doing. This is why I do it. So that's
Yeah, the why. I mean,
the
it
why.
really is that, someone's story can change one person's life.
Yes,
And by having the capability and the access to get that story out to a larger audience, you can really impact a lot of people.
absolutely.
So what would you say to, the scenario, it's a brand new author, has never published anything, and is brand new and comes to you and says, "Okay, how can we work together?" What are some, tips you would have for someone who's starting out as
Yeah,
a first-time author?
sure.
Go ahead.
And there are a lot of things. There are a lot of different ways out there that you can put together a book. But if the person has not written the book yet, one of the biggest
Mhm.
things that I let them know, especially if they're writing their life story or part of their story, so it doesn't have to be the whole thing, but just to think of the before they even write a word, what I would like them to think is, what do I want the reader to think about when they shut the book? When they're done, what are
Mm.
they going to take away from this? What did
Yeah.
they learn, or how did they feel, or does this inspire them to do something? So I want them to, because a lot of people will get into the habit, especially if they're writing their memoir or their personal story, that it's just a chronological set of stories. And they
Mhm.
don't really think of why. Why would the reader, if they don't know who you are, why, what keeps them interested? And so I try to give them a lot of coaching from the
Mhm.
beginning, or even if they've already started writing, that we can step back and say, hey, let's look at this, let's get what that focus is. What's that why are you
Mhm.
writing this?
Mhm.
And get an outline together. The outline is very important. It gives a structure. I tell them in the beginning, really don't really hone yourself into, that you have to stick to that rigidly, but know that you have to have one, just so that you kind of have a guideline of
Right.
what you how you want to tell your story. Because I know personally, when I tell stories, when I'm just with my friends, you kind of derail sometimes.
Yeah,
You
but
get
that's what
off on
makes it interesting too.
it
Sometimes the
is, yeah.
best part comes out of, yeah,
Exactly,
exactly.
and that's why I tell them, don't be rigid with yourself about the
Mhm.
outline, but it's somewhere to start. And that's really where, you have to have a starting point. You have to have that jump off point. And also after that, once the story is written, I, really impress on people that a good editor is
Yeah,
imperative.
yeah.
Even the best writers in the world have really great editors because you can't be great at everything. So
Mhm.
it's a good thing to have an editor. And of course, when we do our layouts for the interior and do our book covers, and we always have a proofreader. We do our
Mhm.
proofreading actually after it's been edited and laid out, so that we're actually reading proofreading from a book, because
Right.
I think you find far more errors that way.
Right.
Which is good. But
Right.
that's really, that's kind of the structure of, how it, from, beginning to an actual book. And then the fun begins.
So let's say that, I'm a writer and I'm kind of stuck. I'm at like a certain number of words, or I put too much pressure on, like, I have to get this released by September and the clock is ticking and everything. And someone, with your experience of having seen that from so many different authors, and the editing process and everything, what would you say to someone who might just be kind of, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm kind of stuck right now.
Well, the big question that I would ask is, why do you have that? Why have you imposed yourself on that schedule? Why
Right.
do you want to have that deadline? Now, sometimes
Right.
it's legit. Sometimes there's actually, hey, there's an event that I need to have this done by, and I'm really
Mhm.
pressured. But if it's really arbitrary and they just kind of made that up, the thing that I tell them is, hey, you got to follow your muse. And sometimes we get stuck because we need to rethink things, and we need to take another look and reread the book, because
Yeah.
that's another thing. You get so tunnel vision and focused on the end that you forget that you're still telling a story, and that you still have to tell it in a way that is going to engage the reader from page one to the last page. And
Yeah.
that's, I think that people get really caught up. And I know that there are a lot of programs right now that, it's like, write a book in 30 days or write a book in
Right.
whatever. And
Right.
that's great. You know what? For some books, it's really possible when it's
Excuse
nonfiction
me.
and it's,
Yeah.
based on, some certain topic. Yeah, great. But if you are writing fiction or you're writing your own story, I would say, maybe set a realistic, like, I'm going to take a year to write this.
Right.
But if you're looking at writing your personal story in 60 days, it's
Yeah.
probably not going to happen. And if it does, kudos, just way good on you. but the thing is that it really, the longer you take and the more, I mean, granted, you can actually pick it apart too much, but if you actually just let the flow happen, and I know that
Mhm.
sounds very kind of new agey, but it's really true.
Mhm.
The story that comes out of you will come out naturally if you're telling your personal story. Um, and same goes with fiction, because sometimes
Yeah.
you'll be on one track and you think that this character is going to have the weight of the world, and then all of a sudden it's just like this little subplot of this other character becomes the favorite of readers. So it's a process, and to really think when they're reading it and reading back, to make sure that they're reading as a reader and not as the author. That's a
Right.
big thing.
Right. And sometimes if you're like really stuck, you just need to maybe put it down for a bit, go walk the dog or go for a walk or something, right? And kind of
Absolutely.
clear your head and then come back and look
Mhm.
at it. So let's talk publicity and marketing, and with all like we talked about off camera with today's technology, it's amazing because like, you worked back in TV and I worked in the touring world
Yeah.
and things. And back in the day, in order to get your message out, it had to be in a TV studio or radio
Mhm.
studio. And now authors have all this technology, like we can sit here in our home office and broadcast and
Yeah.
reach people all over the world. What would you say, like some of the things that an author can do to stand out by utilizing this technology?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we have available to us, and I think we all have a love-hate relationship with it, but it's social media. There are things
Yeah.
like, even TikTok, there's a subgroup called Book Talk, and people just review books, or they talk about books, or
Nice.
they show their favorite books, and it's free. That's the amazing thing that, when you really think about it, and I try to impress upon my authors that, use that social media to your advantage, because we use
Hmm.
it, of course, on the sales side and marketing side. We try to promote all of our books. We talk about what our authors are doing. We kind of do that a little bit as PR, but
Hmm.
we utilize it as much as we can, because of course free is great, but we want to really let our authors know that, as much as we post about their books, that the reader really wants to hear from the author. They
Right.
want to know, do you like tea or coffee? Okay. Do you
Right.
have dogs or cats? Do you have both?
Right.
That's
Right.
really what they want. And so when I try to, coach them a little bit on, if you're going to be doing a lot of stuff on social media, don't think too much about the book. We've got that covered.
Right.
We'll tag you, we'll do all those things, and it'll happen. But what the reader wants is they want to know you. And so using social media is great. Utilizing all the media that's out there. Get on podcasts. That's
Yeah.
a big thing. That's kind
Yeah.
of the new PR strategy I've been telling all my authors is get on a podcast, get on a few, go after that, because, who's, there, yes, some people still read newspapers, but more
Haven't read
people,
newspaper in years.
right? It's like, oh, they still make those. Um, but it's just a
Yeah.
thing of a lot of people listen to podcasts, and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter the size of the podcast either. That's what I tell them is
Yeah.
like, yeah, it would be great to have 1 million followers, already that listen to this. But you know what? Someone that has 15 or 50
Yeah.
and they're growing. I don't like to discriminate between size of any free publicity or free marketing because you never know. The right person could be listening, and there you go.
Right, exactly. And we talk about that with our rockstar media training, that whenever you go on a show, it doesn't matter how many listeners or viewers or anything, you're just focused on having that conversation with that one person and really connect with them, because you never know. And we've got tons of road stories of, like, this artist song was playing over the PA when the director was in there, paying for something, and heard it and said, "Hey, who's that band? I need them in my movie." And it,
Yeah.
like, can happen like
Mhm.
that. And I mean, you never know. Oprah could be listening to your podcast. You just never know, right? So,
Right, right,
um,
absolutely.
yeah. And, like, when you're working and doing publicity, and if you're working with, like, outside publicists, right? Like, say
Mhm.
the author comes to you and they already have a publicist or something additional, like, what are your thoughts on working with, like, or what are, I guess what I should ask is, what are some qualities that you look for when you're working with, like, outside publicists promoting your authors?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I've found, because that is uh, publicity is very important, and
Mhm.
whether you're doing it free or you're paying someone to help, from a PR agency. The biggest thing that I tell my authors, though, is make sure that if to find a publicist that has worked with books, that has worked with
Yes.
publishing, because that's a really huge thing, because it's different if you do movies, if you do publicity
Mhm.
um, for musicians. It's a whole different realm, and I think having worked in basically all those realms, I know that
Yep.
they are very. There's a little bit of um, proprietary knowledge in each one
Right.
of those,
Right.
and people really do want to make sure that it's like, okay, the industry, okay, and or they're known in the industry as well. That's a
Right.
big thing. And so I really want to make sure that when we pick publicists, that they are definitely for the demographic,
Mhm.
that they've worked in the resources that we need them to, whether it's podcasts or media, or
Mhm.
just even getting the local TV station to call you back and
Yeah,
have them interview
exactly.
a local author is
Yeah.
really big. And it's amazing how many, you would think that that would be an easy thing, especially in smaller towns, but it's not. And so we have to make sure that the publicists that we look for follow along the lines of the needs of the author, the outcome. And
Mhm.
that's another reason why we are very boutique, is because I would say that just about every single author that we have, they have different needs. Their end
Mhm.
result is different. Even though that they're kind of the same or the same genre, they all have different goals that they want to achieve.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's the thing, is that, you can't really go with a cookie cutter type of publicity or marketing or anything. It's really catered to the author has different needs, and also their
Mhm.
story, but like you said, it really pays to find professionals that are really specialized in a certain field, and just, lean on their experience and everything. So,
Yeah.
let's talk music. So, who is your favorite rock star? We had this conversation off camera, and I just
We
love it.
did,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
did,
yeah.
and I have to say, because, Gen X rules, go Jets,
Yes, yes,
whatever.
yes,
Dave Grohl, I mean, come on,
yes,
he's Gen X god for us,
yes.
with Nirvana and everything,
Yep.
but, we talked about this too, is I just love music, and
Yeah,
have been a big fan of, U2 was really huge for me, and then I was
yeah,
a headbanger in college, so it's really tough. It's really tough to pick, but Dave is probably our spokesperson, I think, for Gen X, which is, I
yeah.
just think it's wonderful that he just speaks his mind and really, embodies what we what we all grew up with.
Yeah, and he's just such, like, a genuine guy.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I've never worked with him directly. I've worked with people in his camp and things, and never heard anything bad about him, but he's just a genuine guy. He's like, he just plays the drums. He just sings, he just plays guitar. He embodies the music. And this is something too that authors can really think about this too, is that
Mhm.
musicians are storytellers as well. They're
Oh,
just sharing
absolutely.
their story through music. So it's like, when
Yeah,
you create that emotion, and
yeah.
that's something that, Foo Fighters and Nirvana and just like U2 and every band out there, there's something about when you hear that song, even if it's 20 years old, it takes you right back.
Oh,
to
yeah.
where
Well, and to that end,
yeah.
that's also another thing too is when and it goes along with what I'm telling my authors about connecting, connecting
Mhm.
to them and connecting their story is, uh, when I'm listening to music or, hear a band interviewed or anything, and of course that takes a lot of media training. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
is like the first thing that I thought, when I heard Dave speak was, dude, I just want to have a beer with you. Like,
Right. Right,
I just
right,
let's
right.
go have beers,
Yeah,
and or a shot of tequila or whatever it takes. But
yeah.
it's just like I just want to hear I want to hear your stories. Not
Right.
I don't want to hear anything, just like I don't want the drama. I just want to hear how how you tell the stories. And he has his book is great. He did a wonderful
Yeah,
job on his memoir that came out. And it's just it is that thing, it's that connection. When you connect to
yeah,
people, and music, of course, is a strong way to connect, but so are stories. If you get people that really want your story, and then again, that leads into audiobooks as well. So for
yes.
the people that aren't reading, but you can connect with them audio-wise.
Right, and as an author, going on a podcast and talking about, your story, why you wrote this book, or something that, like you just said with Dave Grohl, you feel like you know the guy,
Mhm.
like he's like, I know this guy, right? And there's that X factor, right, that we talk about,
Right.
and that connection. And, as an author, when you have that, you go on a podcast and you really connect with your audience, with that host, then people listen and are like, wow, I need to read this book. This person sounds like somebody I can relate to, somebody I can go have a drink with or go have a coffee with. And
Mhm.
it's really that, making that connection with
Mhm.
them.
And I know that, we've used that word a lot in this
Yeah.
podcast,
Yeah.
but it's true. I think
It's
that
true.
it's really I mean, if we're not doing things to connect to people, I
Hmm.
personally think that, why? I mean, because that's part of my why. If I'm not connecting people or I'm not connecting to people, why am I
Right.
doing it? And
Right.
that's for me. That's my personal, that's
Yeah.
what drives me. But I think it's really important for people to think about that when they are writing their books. What are they writing this for? Is it a business book that they want to help other people, or they want a business book just to support them as a speaker, or
Right.
or what it is? And
Right.
that's really, it comes down to that. And thank you, Simon Sinek, for making this, buzzwordy. But
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
why. It is the
Yeah.
why that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
drives us, and that is, part of that structure. When I was saying, the first thing that I asked the authors, what do you want them to think when they shut that book?
Yeah.
Like, did they shut it at page 5, or did they shut it at page 450?
Wow. Yeah.
That's the biggest thing is like the more you can connect, the better.
Yeah. Well, so how can people work with you? What's the best way to reach out to you? And
The best way is just to go on our website and sign up for our newsletters. The
mhm,
newsletters, I'll just warn you, they don't go out very often, but they do. But if you are an aspiring writer or
mhm.
actually have self-published before, we do help people self-publish if they want to do that. Or as we're saying now, we're kind of changing the narrative. It's more author-published because we are looking at a lot of, we want to make sure that when we're working with the author published people, that we do take it a step further than just throwing it up on Amazon and forgetting about it.
Right.
So
Right.
but yeah, so they can email. We have the contact. It goes directly to me.
Mhm.
It actually has my email right there.
Mhm.
So you can even go directly that route, but go through the website because it's a little
Yep.
bit better. And you can see what we also publish, and you can see our
Yes.
mission. We
Yeah.
and we also have some resources. We have links that they can go to. So that's really the first step. And then after that, once if you want to if you have a book idea, you want to give me a synopsis, that's great. Or if you just want to schedule a call,
Mhm.
we can chat and see if we vibe, see if we're a good fit, and see if this is something, if you need more coaching, or what your needs are. And I am very connected with our Independent Book Publishers
Mhm.
Association with the
Mhm.
IBPA. I'm on their advocacy committee, and I'm also in several different hybrid groups, where if I can't publish it, I do have people that we can reach out to, as well, to see if there's interest. So
Yes. Reach out to her at wbrandpub.com. right?
That
Okay.
is correct,
Well,
sir.
Julie, thank you. Thank you so much for taking time today. This is so cool because I've had some authors on my show and I'm going to have some publicists on the show. And I just really appreciate you taking the time and really giving us a lot of insight into the publisher side and what do you look for. And yeah, we're just really excited to have you on the show.
Well, I could talk about this all day, and I just thank you so much for reaching out and
You
for
got it.
even having me on this, because I think it's really important that we start talking about the other options in publishing that are
Hmm.
very viable and legit.
Yeah.
So,
Great. Well,
yeah.
thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. All right.
All
Until
right.
next time.
Yes.
Cheers.
Bye.
See ya.